Hello, my name is Paul Shrimpling from Remarkable Practice. Welcome to this series of podcast interviews, albeit the video versions, with the owners, leaders, managers of accounting firms who've done a brilliant job of challenging the status quo in their firm, challenging their thinking and the way they work, as well as connecting at a deeper level with both their team and their customers and their fellow owners as well, so that they ultimately transform the results of their firms. How do your team, how does your firm make a really strong emotional bond, emotional connection with your clients? Well, on this podcast with Stephen Pell, who is a specialist niche firm working in the music artist industry, you'll hear Stephen talk about how, I suppose, easy it is to build an emotional connection between his team and his clients, and also how well they have done it. But I think what Stephen's talking about is what every accountant can do with every business owner client, which is build an emotional connection. Let's go to that podcast discussion with Stephen now.
So my name's Stephen Pell, founder of ICONAC. We're a specialist firm that works across the music industry, particularly focusing on music artists and entertainers. I started the firm probably about 5 years ago. Sort of my kitchen table, we've grown to a team of 15 people, working remotely across the UK and US. And yeah, we're very, very sort of focused on our niche. I'm incredibly passionate about working with music artists, about helping them to make better decisions in a quite a complex and chaotic music industry.
Brilliant. So 15 people in 5 years. My first question revolves around the people piece, Stephen. What does, especially if all of your team are working remotely, what does the phrase humanise the numbers actually mean to you, your team, your firm, even your clients for that matter? What does it resonate? How does it resonate with you?
Well, first of all, it's the passion. You know, I think what glues us all together in sort of this niche, in this area, is music and our love for music. And it doesn't have to be the same type of music. But it all resonates with us in such a powerful way that, particularly, you know, with our team, it helps with recruitment because we're different. But also, we seem to get that extra bit, you know, from our team and from me personally. We get that extra sort of 10%, 20% just because we want to and we care and we're very passionate about the people that we work with.
Yeah.
You know, we're very understanding of their needs, and we want to be there to help and support because it just resonates that little bit more, I think, than it would do for anyone else.
Yeah. No, and I've got two sons of my 4 children who are avid musicians, so this one's quite personal for me. Best man at my wedding's in the music industry, so I'm really looking forward to this discussion. But what I'm now curious about, how do you know you're getting 10% or 20% more from your people compared with others in other firms, which I guess is what you may be referencing?
Yeah, I mean, just from my experience, having myself worked in a general practice firm to start with, that's where I sort of got my badges and my qualifications. And, you know, I just remember from a personal perspective, always looking for that extra exciting client, that extra moment, that extra thing that caught my interest. Otherwise, I just felt it was quite bland. I mean, I could have quite easily left accounting to go and do something else, but I tried to circle it back around to something that I was passionate about and that I really enjoyed. You know, I had these skills, and I just sort of, you know, put myself in someone else's shoes, thinking, you know, if I was a trainee coming through, how exciting would it be to be working with rock bands, musicians? You know, numbers are numbers at the end of the day. They do tell a story, whatever business line you're in. And these people have really successful businesses. It's just that they are creative personalities managing them, and there's a different balance and a different approach that needs to be taken with these personalities. And you know, it's incredibly exciting, just the environment, you know, having a meeting in a recording studio rather than, you know, the back office of a high-rise building somewhere in, you know, in the middle of Birmingham. You know, it's a very different perspective and it's a very different feeling. I think it's that emotive element that really carries you through. And just going back to sort of the team and recruitment, like, you know, when someone's passionate about music, you know, if you're passionate and you open a conversation and you spend 90% of the meeting talking about music and about what you love doing and why you love doing it, and 10% about, you know, everything else, then you know you've got someone that's probably going to be right for the role in some respects. So
whether they can do the job or not, is that
well, there's obviously that comes
piece,
in as well, but of course it does. But I think it's, for me, we hire on values. So when I set this business up right from the start, it was all about the values, all the kind of things that starting a business from scratch, what you wish you could have done better from everywhere else you'd worked.
Yeah.
So we really start, and we hire on culture first. And obviously we need to know people who've done the job, but you can kind of get a grasp of that when you're sort of looking through CVs and what they've achieved and what they've done. And we sort of run a few sort of tests before they even sort of get to that place anyway. So you kind of know that. But also the way that we do things as well, I like to hire people in sort of fresh and young and hungry, and then sort of wrap them to the way that we do things, because I think it's quite anti-traditional in the way that we've set up. We've kind of deconstructed everything and put it back together in a way that we can serve our clients in a way that they can understand and work. And I think it's the same for our team. I think one of the recruiting more senior people, it become more difficult to sort of get them culturally adapted to the way that we do things. So I think that's sort of part of the challenge in the recruitment. But obviously they've got to have the qualifications, they've got to have the professional standards and all of that. But for me and the way that we run our business, culture sort of is more important, and sort of going that extra way.
Yeah. So do you think it's easier for you to recruit, Stephen, because you're going, look, we work with the music industry? Do you think it? And I'm curious, because my experience of all the firms we work with on an ongoing basis, week in, week out, and I'm now sat here questioning, why have I chosen accountants as my specialism when you've got the music industry? I'll explain that in a minute. But is it easier to recruit, do you think?
It goes both ways. I think it really polarizes people.
Right.
So we either get people that are so passionate that really, really, really want the job, really want it.
Right.
We don't really get those people that kind of just, meh, I'll take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But I think we've noticed that when we have recruited and we've had the speculative CVs come through, when it comes down to it, they're thinking, no, maybe not. But when people are really, really interested in wanting in the job and the music industry, and you can tell that they are sort of, emotionally sort of connected to it in some way and engaged, they really put out all the stops. And and that's again, talking about that extra 10-20%, that's where that sort of comes from as well. And I think when they have it as well, they realise that perhaps it's not going to be the same everywhere else as well. Which is
so now I'm curious, because we've touched on that engagement piece, and I'll refer to some Gallup, McKinsey, Bain & Co research around how do you get an engaged team, which it sounds as though is easier because not just that you're a niche firm, but you're a niche firm in the music industry, which, you associate with passion just as you would with, say, sport, and for me, accountants. I'm wondering what the culture's like in terms of the standards of performance of your team, in terms of people holding each other to account or just people holding themselves to account. What's that like in your firm?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think we've got a really an excellent team, very well knit team, very integrated.
Well, you would say that because they're going to listen to this podcast, aren't you? But...
They are going to listen to this podcast. I'm sure they are. But the way that we create engagement. So in the music industry, it's very project driven, and I think what you get from that is you get very clearly defined starts and finishes to projects that are not necessarily. So it's that sort of boundary of that chaotic work and that sort of statutory filings that you have to do every quarter, every year, which can become monotonous. So I think that stabilization of that, which is important for accountants, but we also galvanize each other, engage on these particular projects that we work on, which I think helps to motivate and inspire and becomes sort of an exciting addition to what other accountancy practices would potentially work on. And they're engaged in those projects as well, because next week we're all going to a client's gig in Brixton Academy, and it's a team day out, and we'll sort of have dinner and go out to the gig and meet our clients and go backstage. And that's although we're sort of a remote firm, doing those kind of things is quite important, and I think it suits a certain type of personality to be able to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm wondering if you just, without breaking confidences or anything, is just, can you describe one of those projects so I can just get a sense as to, because what I'm trying to do is build a bridge with other firms in other niches, or other firms in general practice for that matter, in terms of what projects could look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've just come off the back of reconciling quite a big tour for one of our artists. So they were out in the US for 6 weeks, I suppose. Their headline tour, so a massive tour out there, probably grossing $1.5–2 million. So it's a pretty decent sized tour, and throughout that, pre-tour, there's sort of a lot of work that you've got to do to sort of, get the invoices out, get the money in, deal with any sort of withholding tax agreements before they go, like get budgets signed off, meetings with management teams and the agents to make sure everything's in place, make sure the tour managers have got their bank cards, make sure everything is sort of set up, ready to go. And then whilst you're on the tour, there's always someone that's lost their bank card or, some sort of issue. And then there's bills that need to be paid as you go. There's always some promoter that's not paid or something like that. So we have to step in. So that's kind of as we go. And then come the end of the tour, everyone wants to know what the profit was, and everyone wants to know how much commission they're going to earn and how much they can take out the back of it. And it's very urgent to get that all in very quickly, because it just is when it's we obviously promise a certain deadline to get them delivered by. And there's always things that sort of come up, throughout the tour or post tour, that we didn't expect. We have to then chase information from people, and it becomes a nightmare. And then the deadline sort of looming, and then we have to sort of pose that. We advise the client how much they can take out of the money that they've made, how much they've got to set aside for tax, how much the withholding tax they can get back, and then explain that in the context of the cash flow for the next year. Like, okay, well, this is what other tours you've got coming up, but actually you're going to need to cash flow 50% of that now, so we need to keep that in. So that's kind of what a project might look like, and for a band that might be 3 or 4 of those a year. And we're working with lots of different artists doing these all over the world. So they jump in at certain points, and obviously in the background, we've got to be doing their bookkeeping, their statutory financial statements, their tax returns, the personal tax returns. So we had that on top of all the personal tax returns that came in, deadlines that loomed in December, and January. So. Yeah, it's that's kind of what a project would typically look like, I guess, for an artist.
Okay. So how on earth do you price a project like that?
So this has been something that's been an evolving methodology over the years. I certainly at the start did not get this right. In fact, I started with sort of fixed pricing, based on sort of quite a specific building a price calculator, and then I sort of moved into another methodology whereby I'm sort of doing a bespoke per client sort of methodology with a little bit of value pricing based in there. But since I guess 2 years ago, we basically scrapped all that, and we just have three tiers. We have a core plan, we have a select plan, and we have a concierge plan for our clients. And basically they're just bundles of services, and we have a subscription model now, basically, and they subscribe to whichever service they want. And the sort of the top plan being that all bells and whistles, we make payments, we do cash flow, we do everything for you. And then the bottom plan just being focused by, we'll make sure you've got the foundations, your taxes are covered, but we do make sure that they have bookkeeping and that they have some sort of business management element, because knowing our clients, they cannot do that kind of thing, and they need support with that. That will fall by the wayside, and we can't do our job. So we have to be driving everything in what we do, and so there's quite a high threshold for the minimum service plan, which is why we're not the right fit for everyone. So there has to be a certain earning level for our artists before they can sign up to us. But when they do, we do add a huge amount of value to what they're doing, because obviously no one on their team can manage the finances in that way.
So how do you? This is a multifaceted question, because I'm interested in when you first started. How did you find clients? But I'm also interested in how do you find, or clients find you now that you're a little bit more established? I'm looking for a compare and contrast here.
Yeah. Well, when I first started out, the first thing I did to get clients was to I wrote a book. I wrote a guide on how a music artist can set up their business structures. Just something really, really simple, just to act as a business card. Because although I did work in entertainment, I didn't bring any clients with me at all. I started from 0 clients, and then that was my, that's kind of was quite a scary place to be. But I decided the best thing to do was to show some knowledge and expertise, show what I knew, and then I used that to open doors, basically, to get into a few management companies, and then just started doing, just working with them. Charged far too little for my services at the start, and made, and that's been difficult to unwind over the years because they're completely undervalued what I did. And I think at the start, what I wanted to do was, because I'm CTA qualified, I wanted to give tax advice, but actually I learned no one wanted tax advice. They wanted someone to help run their businesses and tell them how much the money they were making. So I had to really change my business model to suit the artist rather than what I wanted to deliver in my skill sets. So that was kind of one of the and I suppose on the sort of the thread of getting clients, it just became word of mouth from then on in. You do a good job for someone, and because it's such a small, such a close niche, it's almost a niche within a niche. What we're doing, it's the music industry, but it's actually the music industry comprises of record labels, publishing companies, live events. It's streaming companies. Spotify could be included in that. It's huge, but we're just targeting the artist, the creator within that space. So we sort of aligned ourselves with that quite early on. And just from there on in, we sort of gathered momentum with referrals. In the music industry, it's about having a tight network as well. It is true, what they say is that, it is who you know to a certain degree, because there is some sort of glass ceiling. I remember that because when I was in a band, sort of in my teenage years, I thought we were brilliant, but we could never get signed. I was looking at all these bands around us who were getting signed, and I had no idea they weren't any better. And it was, and that I think part of my intrigue and why I'm working in music is to do with that as well. But that network was important to grow early on, so I went to tons of networking events, made sure I was at every sort of important one, and then you get an opportunity and you got to just take it. And that was how I started out. And then coming to sort of over the years where we are now, I think what happened is we ended up sort of working, some of the clients that we started working with got big. And because they got big, our reputation grew with them. And that then enabled us to get sort of, bigger clients. And we haven't really spent too much on marketing. That is something that we want to do, but I think I've always been very conscious that I want to make sure that we've got things sort of set up so that we can scale. We've had to actually, over the last few years, scale back on the services we offer. So we've had to unwind what we do to be able to go forwards and scale.
So explain that a little bit more then. So what have you decided not to? So you're saying you've made a decision not to do certain things. Exactly.
So we would try and almost be very general practice. Almost all things to our clients, and that made me very stretched because I was the only one in the team that could provide the sort of the tax advice or the sort of the high level stuff, like even when it came to the sort of the cross border residency bits, SCIS and EIS and things like that would come up, these ad hoc projects. It was taking me out of the game, and I needed to be in the business, sort of running it. So we decided to basically scale back and just focus really on business management. So the compliance element, the bookkeeping element, and the cash flow reporting element of what we do. Anything else, we basically decided that we would subcontract and bring people in to and use their expertise. So use other people who've got niche businesses that can provide the residency bit. We bring them in. Before we were trying to do everything, and that meant that we couldn't scale, and we decided to unwind all of that, take that out of our plans, and then once we've done that, we're ready to go forwards and sort of pull the trigger on the sort of the marketing. But yeah, we have plans for sort of doing that over the next sort of year or two, and sort of really going for pushing for growth. And we know exactly what our marketing message is because of our niche.
What is it?
We know our identity profile. Well, it's that we can help creative people make better business decisions in a complex world. You know, it's all about aspiration and dreams. You know, for our clients, and we're here to be that sort of that foundation for them, that support, that rock.
Yeah. So it sounds like early doors, lots of mistakes, as you'd expect from any startup business. Interesting that you were inspired to write a book as your business card. I thought that's a interesting. Talking to Carl Reed, who's also in this specialist series for the podcast, did something similar and very much look to get in the door of key people. I'm curious, just as a little bit of micro detail, if you're working in a niche, it is, like you say, about the network of people around you as a band, for sure, but also around you from an introductions perspective, I guess. So open. You had a throwaway statement. We used the book, the business card book, to open doors. How exactly did you do that?
It was hustling, to be honest. I had to, I mean, there was no magic secret. I just basically had a look and made a list of the people that I wanted to target, that I felt were my, that I had an opportunity, particularly it was sort of the young, hungry managers starting out, that were trying to build their own networks as well. So that's who I was looking to connect with. It was a sort of a strategic list that I had. But it was a case of just me sending out the book, writing a personalized message in, saying how much I admired what they did and really loved their artists. And it was the people that I wanted to work with as well. One of the reasons you start this business is because you work with the people that you want to work with when you want to work with them. And that was kind of part of the fun of me doing that, starting a business with a blank sheet of paper saying, who do I want to work with? And writing out that list and then sending off the book with a sort of a, here's a book, you might find this interesting, and how about should we grab a coffee or grab a beer, or I'm going to the gig that your artist is playing, maybe we could hang out afterwards. And just opening up a dialogue and a conversation. It didn't happen overnight, but over a few months, and everyone needs an accountant at some point. That's the fortunate thing about being an accountant. You're always going to be in demand. But it's just being there when you're needed and being available, I think, and taking the opportunity when it comes. And that was all that I did to get things off the ground. Obviously, you've got to do a good job and show that you know what you're doing.
Once you've got them,
you got them in,
you've got to deliver, haven't you? Yeah. Brilliant. So the interesting early days undercharged. So if you were to have your time again, are you saying you would have charged 10% more or twice as much? I'm just trying, I'm thinking there's people who are going to listen to this podcast who are going, I know what my niche is and I'm wondering how to get going. Or we're running a general practice and we've got this opportunity to build this niche. We've got to get the pricing piece right as well as the marketing and the hustling piece right.
Yeah. The pricing piece is very tricky because it's an art, it's not a science. Again, that's something that I've learned. I've tried to make it a science and it's not. It depends on how much people value their time and when they start out. And there's also a trade-off with trying to get some momentum as well. And there's a psychological thing that you need to do to get clients to create that momentum. I think now, I probably, if I had my time again, would charge 3 or 4 times more than probably what I was charging at the start.
To begin with?
Yeah.
So it's not 10% more, 50% more,
No, I was really undercharging. But that did serve a purpose because it created the networks and it got the people on board and, but, that said, I think, I should have charged that much more, I think, early doors, because the conversation becomes too difficult when you're trying to increase the prices sometimes. And also that people pay it. People will pay it.
Brilliant. So I'm guessing your artists, especially established artists, are going to already have an incumbent existing financial accountancy, bookkeeping sort of person involved. So something prompts them to consider the shift.
Yeah.
what is it that drives them nuts, or is unraveling?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's normally two things that create that sort of that shift. Normally, people don't want to move accountants. I think that's the same whether you're a musician or any other business. It can be quite painful, and but the things that I've identified is, one, the accountants drop the ball on something. Like there's a tax bill that's come out of nowhere, or they've not filed something, and there's penalties. There's something that's created some pain. Usually it's something that it's a huge tax bill that they knew last minute, or something that hasn't been filed on time, but they don't fully understand the nature of the problem, and it might not always be the accountant's fault, but it's created something that's created doubt in their mind. So that's one. The other point is normally when managers, when they change management team, or they change the legal team or record label, sometimes they want them to be with their own accountants or a team that they trust. Particularly managers, like they have trusted advisors that they work with, and when they sign a new artist to their management company, they say, right, you've got to leave that accountant and come with us, because quite often they might just be with a general practice accountant it might be a friend of their dad's or something like that. It might be, quite often it's their granddad doing their books or something, and it's starting to get a bit serious, and a professional manager would say, no, you need to have someone that knows the music industry. You need to and it's kind of driven by that. That's why it's quite important for us to have good relationships with managers and agents, and
it sounds like that's the key, isn't it? That unlocks all sorts of possible doors. So we go down a different path, Stephen. There's a lot of talk in the accountancy profession about the transition over time from compliance to advisory. I'm of the opinion it's from compliance to compliance and advisory. I don't think the compliance is particularly going away. How are you seeing that shift apply to what you're doing for your clients in your niche?
Yeah, I mean, compliance is very important in what we do. That's one of the things that we're here to help our clients with. They could never exist without that. So that's not going to go away anytime soon. I think the shift is for us that we don't talk about it. We just do the compliance. It's part of the service. It's we got your back. We do all of these things for you, but we're not going to say, look how well we've done a tax return. Look how, we're going to charge X amount. It's wrapped up in the whole service, and that whole service pretty much is an advisory service in many ways, because we are part of the subscription model that we have. Like, our clients can pick up the phone to us at any time. We're open. We get on a video call, Zoom call, whenever they want. And to ask questions, and that for us is the advisory element to what we're doing. But we can't answer those questions unless we've done the tax returns and we know their tax position, and we know. So it's all sort of, for me, it's all part of the same thing in many ways. I don't try and say we do compliance and advisory. This is the outcome that we're trying to achieve, but to do this, we have to do this and this and this. This is how it all aligns together. I don't certainly agree with the sentiment that compliance is dead at all. I don't think it is.
No, and as much as the technology is having a bigger and bigger impact and making it easier and easier and faster, it's still... It seems obvious, doesn't it, with a particularly music artist or other kind of artist, that they'd want the reassurance that the numbers are all right, and therefore choosing the right accountancy firm and accountancy people is important to them.
I think you're right, and with the sort of the automation piece, it's not about how, with the value conversation, it's not about how long anything takes ever, in my opinion. Even if it's pushing a button, they could be pushing the wrong numbers in. So it's it's the value, it's the know-how, it's knowing, that sort of analogy with the sort of the hammer and the nail, and knowing where to tap to correct it. That's the sort of the value. So the fact that there's a drive to the bottom with sort of pricing and automation in the compliance space doesn't bother me. It might bother other accountants where there's a sort of a drive to the bottom with their pricing, but I think if you're wrapping it in the whole sort of value proposition of your service, then I don't think it really it should really create too much of a problem.
Yeah. I'm trying to climb into the room where you're in discussion with an artist as to whether, or the management team, as to whether you should be their accountant or not, and how it is you demonstrate value around what you do to them compared with their previous experiences. How does that conversation unfold?
Well, I think right off the bat, I mean, when we have our sort of first meetings, they can immediately tell that we're not their current accountant, because of the language that we use and the way that we talk about a record deal and advances and recoupments and royalty rates and going on tour and tour managers and crew and per diems and all the sort of the lingo. Right off the bat, they know that they can be understood when we talk to them, which I think is a common thing that I get from the clients that we take on, is that our accountants didn't. Yeah, they did. I mean, I won't say what they exactly language.
Yeah, but it's like the client has been educating their accountant.
They have to spend 2 hours explaining all of this stuff to their accountant for them to not really still get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of an obvious way to sort of show that we're different. And I think the other differentiator, not necessarily from all accountants, there's some great accountants, but we're very big on technology. And apps and trying to avoid spreadsheets where at all possible for our clients, and simply understanding that seems to be gobsmack quite a lot of them. Right. Thinking, there's these tools that we don't have to submit Excel spreadsheets, but our accountants always been asking us to do that. That sort of is revolutionary to them, although it's not just specific to music and entertainment, but it is it's 2 or 3 differentiators that sort of set us apart, I think, when we're talking to our clients. But yeah, I think speaking their language is sort of the main thing, and understanding what they want. They want to be creative, they've got dreams, they want to be, they're ambitious people, they want to run great businesses, but they don't really know how to. They're very anxious about their careers because they could fall away at any moment. So it's understanding those and trying to help them set a platform to be able to navigate all of that, and just to try and shine a bit of light down the tunnel, just to show what's ahead. Whereas I don't think accountants within, not specific to the music industry, would be able to see.
Yeah, it's interesting. This conversation is, and anyone listening to it, including me, are going, well, this just sounds so easy in your niche. The customers are obvious. The key component of connecting with managers and hustling at gigs and sharing the right language, and it just seems so obvious. I'm wondering what are the key challenges that are showing up regularly in your niche, Stephen? What is it that's driving you and your team bonkers because it's not working?
Well, if you're working in a niche, there's the potential that you might not get the variety of clients, I suppose. We are working with a very particular type of person, and if you don't like that, then or get bored of it, then you've got nowhere to run, because that's kind of what we do, I suppose. There's dangers working in this niche, which we found working through the pandemic, but that if a whole industry shuts down, then it's a bit of a problem, because there's no earning.
Bit like the hospitality industry shut down, and anyone who was in that niche would have been did really struggle.
And that's a challenge, and you can get yourself into a bit of trouble by doing that. But I mean, they're the kind of the main things that I can think of, and otherwise, I mean, I can't think of too many disadvantages. I mean,
so it's more about the potential risks of being so specialist, but the potential risks in occasionally, who could predict the pandemic? So that's going to have an impact.
It's the risks of things like that you can't control, but also the economic risks of what might happen in the future. There could be some changes that come that mean that we have to. There might be certain accounting standards or certain regulations around reporting and things like that, which might change how we have to do things. There might be. There's things that we just can't even think about that. But I think that's the same sort of any business person, anyone operating in any particular niche, or even in general practice. I think one of the advantages that we've got now is that we can start scaling quite quickly because we've got a very narrow niche. But the way that we plan on scaling is not expanding the amount of services, or not expanding necessarily into working with publishing companies or live events, or it's about territory. So moving to the US, hence we've got a team in the US now, because that's going to be our biggest market, and other places in the world as well that we sort of want to corner. So it's the market size is there. And yeah, I think there's still plenty of opportunity in sort of where we are, what we want to do.
Okay. So it's clear in your niche that it's an emotionally driven customer. But I would argue what business owner isn't emotionally driven to some degree, but it's more on the surface in your niche than it would be certainly in an accountancy niche like I'm working. But there's still an emotional quotient that determines whether they choose you or not choose you. And it is more on the surface with your niche than it would be, say, in a builder's merchant niche, or a motor trade niche, or a dental niche, or whatever it would be. But ultimately, we can't ignore, can we, that every business owner is got an emotional piece, and it's, I guess, easier in your space to tap into that. But actually, that's what helps them make the decisions. I would argue that's the same for every business owner. I was in almost a stand-up row yesterday with an accountant who says, well, no, there's no emotional payoff for accounts. You just have to deliver the accounts and tax on time, accurate, and everything will be fine. And I'm like, I'm not sure you quite got it.
No, that's absolutely not. And also, people are different. Every single person, every single relationship is different. And we have this concept, I'm not quite sure where I borrowed it from, but it's emotional bank account concept, whereby, we see our relationships with our clients as a bank account. We do good things, and it goes into the black. We've sort of got these credits. Something's, bad happens, something big, that's a big, minus in the old bank account. But equally, little things that chip away can also take you into the red as well. So we're very conscious about that. And, that's why it's about fostering that emotional relationship. Our clients don't know, they expect everything to be filed on time. Just the fact that you've done it doesn't mean that it's good at all. Like, that's an expectation. What they value is conversation, is understanding, is being listened to, it's being heard, because it can be emotionally difficult working in the music industry. It is tough. They need support. They want someone to talk to, and they want someone that's got their backs, basically. And I think that, obviously it dovetails into the financial discussion, but is equally important to them and our clients. Maybe you're right; it might be difficult for other industries. I wouldn't know, but just from my experience working in music, and it is mostly about the relationship. It is about that human element.
Stephen, my niche is ambitious accountants. So accountants that have got genuine ambition for the future of their people, their clients, their firm as a whole. So I've narrowed in terms of within accountancy who we work with. And it's like, well, how could I possibly get passionate about that? Well, because I've run 4 businesses in my life, and I've worked with 6 accountants, and I've seen that 2 accountants have profoundly changed my life in terms of, the financial, personal wealth, key decisions that were really stressful, and on some occasions even helped me help the other firms that I work with. And there's an emotional payoff for me, but what's clear is ambitious accountants have got a real emotional tie to their people and their clients and the business and the standards they set. So if there's an emotional payoff for accountants, an emotional payoff for music artists, guess what? There's an emotional payoff for every business owner between those two almost extremes, which is why I was really looking forward to this podcast, because it's almost as if we're working at 2 extremes. But my passion and zeal comes from the fact that every business owner deserves to have a brilliant accountant who's actually genuinely cares and genuinely makes a difference to their business. You know, you're passionate about your sector because you're passionate about the sector, but also you want them to not have to be stressed about all that financial guff, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And there's an emotional payoff to that, and I think that's the standout power of this discussion. Is it's obvious and easy in your sector, but actually it's the same in every sector. It's just more hidden. There's just a little bit more work needs to be done with other business owners. And because accountants aren't emotional beasts particularly, they have to work hard at the emotional conversation to understand what it is the real value, emotional value payoff is. But I'm now starting to feel as though I'm on my soapbox, which I need to get off.
But it's a great point. But I would also extend that emotional payoff to the team as well, because
Brilliant.
It's not just about the clients or me as a business owner. It's about them and the emotional payoff that they have from it. You know, the camaraderie and the stories, that create the culture. You know, the good clients, the bad clients, the things that happened on tour that we know about. All of these kind of things create that emotional buy-in, and it's that community that sort of becomes full circle, I think.
Brilliant. And you've used one of my hot words is camaraderie. There's a brilliant research study, and there's a business breakthrough report that it's only, you read it in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea or less, but it just points to the fact there are, in terms of building that highly motivated team, you've got to have a sense of camaraderie. You've also got to have a sense of achievement, and you've also got to have a sense of fairness. And if you've, and it's, if you've got those, and I love the fact that you make reference to the stories. You're emotionally bought into a story. That's the nature of the human psyche, is we buy into stories, whether it's in books or films or your clients' stories. And the more you connect your team to that, or the more your team are connected to that because of the way you work, you're going to have a business that's significantly more engaged, a team that's more engaged, and therefore you're going to deliver to a higher standard, which was your point right at the beginning of this podcast, I think. Yeah. So last question, I just want a quick check-in on, and you touched on it once, but the core purpose of your business, the core message of your business, just say again what it is for me, Stephen, please.
So we want to empower music artists to make better business decisions and make things simple in a chaotic industry. It's very aspirational in what we want for our clients. A lot of them are dreamers. And we want to basically keep them creative and help them to carry on dreaming, basically.
Yeah, brilliant. And I would argue very strongly that you have got a business that's built on that core purpose, that core message. I've got a business that's built on my core message, which is let's shift the profession by helping ambitious accountants humanise the numbers. You can build a more human environment in which people work, and a more human connection between your team and your clients. So we've both got that. And I would argue very strongly to anyone listening to this, if you tap into what you think your core message is for you, your team, your clients, you'll have a far more engaged team and find it as easy. And I'm not saying it was easy really, Stephen, to build a business, but if you've gone in 5 years from, a startup with nobody to a team of 15 working with artists all over the world, I think you've done pretty well. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You'll find more valuable discussions with the leaders of ambitious accounting firms at humanisethenumbers.online. You can also sign up to be notified each time a new podcast is made available. This podcast series, Humanise the Numbers, has been made possible thanks to the support of our sponsors: My Work Papers, Advanced Track, Satago, and VFD Pro. Visit humanisethenumbers.online, click the logo of each sponsor, and you'll hear what our podcast interviewees have to say about the sponsor's services. You're about to hear a short excerpt from a podcast discussion with Sian and Rebecca of an accountancy firm in Cardiff called Lewis Ballard. If you like what you hear, please go to humanisethenumbers.online for the full podcast discussion, or go to Apple or Spotify or your own favourite podcast platform.
Building on what Becky said there, it's very much speaking in the client's language, finding what ticks for them, We might be really interested in, certain figures, gross margin, net margin, tax, all that, but that sometimes really isn't that important to them. And it just, you talk about it and, you really don't want them to glaze over, you want them to engage. So it's trying to find what within that business, what within those numbers is really important to them. And it could be a business element, it could be something more personal, and it could be, a means to an end in terms of kind of their personal life and selling a business even. But it's just trying to find out, why they're doing it, and what they want out of it, really.